Understood.
But that was not Perez's fault. He did everything he could to avoid that errant wheel gun, the spare wheel gun that had been left out by that Ferrari mechanic. Not Perez's fault.
Meanwhile, Zhou Guanyu has been noted for speeding in the pit lane, which might be a penalty for him if that was the case. And this is Mick Schumacher with Sebastian Vettel. Two mates getting nice and close in a friendly fashion going through the chicane. Who comes out on top? Well, Seb is trying to hold this one as long as he possibly can. And that was a very nice piece of driving by both drivers. As Mick Schumacher, Zhou Guanyu has been noted 16th, and that's Lance Stroll coming out of the pits after making his first pit stop in this race. Jensen, a few seconds ago, we looked at Fernando Alonso's lap times.
Yeah, he's in 16.5. He's matching Max.
Well, let's hope the right tyres are ready for Charles Leclerc, who's going to be coming in. Max Verstappen, he's fine on the tyres. 5 seconds now the lead as Charles Leclerc makes his pit stop. And cruises at 60 kilometres an hour to come into the pits. Everyone's ready this time around. And that's what a pit stop should look like.
Yeah, I think Max is probably going to jump on it as soon as Red Bull see the second Ferrari pit, they will be in. But no, his pace has been very good, Max. But the two Mercedes were half a second quicker than the Ferrari and Charles Leclerc over the last few laps.
Yeah, since George Russell's been released, he's going great guns, and Hamilton's finding the times as well, as Lando Norris now comes in, and fist bumps all around. I wonder who's been teaching the McLaren crew to do fist bumps, but a 2.4 second stop for Lando Norris. I think they're right to do the fist bump.
They are indeed. He's actually got the hard tyre on there. He's been looking at, I bet they've been looking at Fernando Alonso's times and put, you know what, let's give it a go.
The pit stops comes to an end. Sainz will probably be running in about 6th place, so that slow stop, he lost 32 seconds in his pit stop cycle. That's cost him round about 3 places on the track. Karun at race control as Max Verstappen, Karun, I'll come to you in a moment. Max Verstappen comes into the pits, and you approach it with DRS and really have to slam the brakes on. Medium tyres going on to Verstappen's Red Bull, and he's back out in not the fastest time that you'll ever see a Red Bull pit stop. Hamilton takes over the lead of the race. George Russell follows him on in second. This is not a surprise, the two Mercedes leading this race, because those on the soft tyres were always going to stop earlier.
Yeah, they were, definitely. That pit stop was a little bit more relaxed, I think, because they knew the position that they had and the pace over the Ferrari. So it was the right thing to do, no mistakes. The interesting thing is now, can he go to the end of the race on that medium set of tyres? That's a lot of laps, 53 laps.
It's a big ask, isn't it? Is that the hard tyre going on for Esteban Ocon as he comes back out onto the racetrack, and he'll be down in 10th place. But Hamilton and Russell haven't pitted yet in that top 10. Neither is Alex Albon, who's running in 7th, and it is the hard tyre as we can go to Karun at race control.
Yeah, unlike at Budapest, Crofty, the hard tyre is working quite well. Fernando Alonso running in the 1:16, significantly quicker than Lance Stroll ahead of him. And in fact, that has allowed him, on these 6 laps he's done on the hard tyre, to jump ahead of Esteban Ocon. So a bit of inter-team rivalry there, I imagine, and the Frenchman won't be very happy.
Well, still on plan A, says Ferrari.
Carlos isn't liking plan A, but
I'm sure they're not liking that repair job either. To be honest, they all have spare wheel guns. But yeah, so what was plan A? Always a 2-stop race, I would imagine.
Well, if it's stopping that early, yeah, that's normally the case, and not jumping onto the hard tyre.
What wasn't part of the plan, though, is that he's now running behind Alex Albon. I mentioned that Zhou Guanyu has been noted for speeding in the pit lane, and the stewards are investigating that. Here comes Carlos Sainz on Alex Albon, and Sainz up into 6th place. And as he does that, we're joined by Mattia Binotto, the Ferrari team principal. Mattia, I've got to ask you first and foremost, just what happened at Carlos Sainz's pit stop?
A mess. What happened, a mess. Very, very last call, and mechanics were not ready. We review that at the end of the race.
It's very difficult here in Zandvoort. It's such a short lap, but how much time do the mechanics get in terms of a warning before the pit stop?
We know that we may do even last call at the last corners of the banking, but not enough time. But we'll review at the end. Certainly it was a mess.
Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc was losing time to Max Verstappen. The tyres were degrading a little bit. What can you do to bring him back into the race, do you think?
I think that was expected. We knew that Max was on new tyres, we were on worn tyres. It was quite a gap between the 2-3 tenths per lap estimated. So I think that Charles was pretty fast at the start of the race, knowing that we got worn tyres. What can we do now? I think as first now we need to manage the medium. Because as well there is Lewis behind, so we don't need to over push, over stress the tyres. We'll need first to manage them for maybe a longer stint, and let's say maybe to push at the end.
And that hard tyre is certainly looking like a decent race tyre. Is it tempting for you to use that at some stage?
Could be. We'll monitor what is going on with Norris, certainly, and Fernando. And let's see those tyres. For us, they were slower to the medium. And even in terms of degradation, they were not better, but we certainly monitor what's going on now and make adjustments.
Mattia, we'll let you get back to it. Thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate your feedback on the pit stop there. And I think everyone agrees it was a mess. These things happen. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Crofty, I've done enough features on these pit stops to know that there is a time on the track at which point the engineers can't stitch up the mechanics like that by calling for such a late pit stop. There's a point at which the engineers have to say, look, you know, we won't be able to get the tyres out in time. So I'm surprised some of the teams, the mechanics can actually go back on the radio and say, not possible, abort, and they can call that it's not possible to get the tyres out in time. So that's a really, even with a slower pit lane speed limit, 60 kph that we have here, that's a bizarre situation that they even got into that point. It's great for Mattia Binotto to be so honest about it. But yeah, that's what they have to review. The engineers have got to give the mechanics a chance.
That might be a costly financial penalty coming Ferrari's way too for leaving that wheel gun where they did. The stewards are going to look at that incident after the race. I would imagine the fine could be coming their way. So Alex Albon now pits. Out in front, Hamilton still leads Russell. It's 3.6 seconds. Have Mercedes missed the chance here to try and jump Sergio Perez a little bit with these pit stops? Because that gap, Perez is closing.
Yeah, I guess they're just thinking we're doing a one-stop. We are sticking to our guns and doing a one-stop, hoping that everyone else is doing it too. And well, the pace doesn't look too bad. 16.8 for both Mercedes out there, which is sort of 7/10 off of the quickest times being done by the next three behind Verstappen, Leclerc and Perez. It looks like Max is a little bit slower on pace. I don't know if that's just him looking after the tyres as he just pumps in a 15.9.
And we'll be right upon George Russell in about 4 laps time. We're watching McLaren and Aston Martin at the moment. Well, we were watching Daniel Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel, and we are now watching Lando Norris and Lance Stroll. Back to Daniel Ricciardo again, who's down in 18th. Vettel's been struggling on these mediums ever since he put them on, and I'm not sure Stroll's times are particularly what they want in terms of his chasing after Lando Norris.
No, he's been passed a lot, hasn't he, Sebastian? And everywhere around the lap he seems to be not strong enough to hold the cars behind back. Now it's Daniel's turn to try and fight forward from an 18th. How's he back in 18th?
Well, qualifying. That's what cost him. He got caught out. There was dust on the track, and he lost time getting it wrong on his final flying lap. McLaren, I think, had he have got through, and he lost about 0.3 of a second in that particular incident. Had he have got through, well, Q3 might have been an opportunity for him, but that just shows you the qualifying system. If you do make a mistake early on, how costly it can be.
Yeah, definitely. It's not the easiest track to overtake, but there have been been some great moves around the lap we've seen so far in this race. On board with Max Verstappen, he's running in P3, first of the pitters, but it's a bit of a tricky one now because he could push really hard on these tyres, but as he knows the cars in front are probably on a one-stop, it does change your way of thinking. You know, should he be looking after the tyres more or what? It's a tricky one, but the team will be feeding him all that information.
This is a really good situation for Mercedes. And I'm not sure when I last said that, to be honest, but it is a really good race situation for Mercedes because Verstappen quicker than George Russell, but is he quick enough to get past George Russell with DRS? Or has George Russell got the potential here to be holding Max Verstappen up for a few laps to allow Lewis Hamilton to carry on out there and run his race and preserve that lead a little bit, or come back into the race very strongly later on?
Yeah, it's surprising that Max is only half a second quicker than the Mercedes. You know, the edge has gone off those tyres already, and he's half a second. It doesn't seem a lot, and to overtake around here, you need to be a little bit more than half a second quicker than a car.
Yeah, I'm told 1.5 seconds a lap quicker is the overtaking threshold. This is the first time this season Mercedes have run 1 and 2 in a Grand Prix, and it's Hamilton who leads Russell. And Ted, down to you.
Thank you, Crofty. We've got. Is this just an RT replay?
It's a lovely shot of Lewis Hamilton's tyres, which don't look too bad.
He's been asking his engineer, where is he losing time? Where can he improve? And so he's obviously pushing. We'll see what Russell does with Verstappen. So you lose 21 seconds on normal race conditions, 21.5 seconds, as I think you've already said, Crofty, when you do a pit stop. So Hamilton pitted now, he'd be about 3 seconds behind Sergio Perez. That's where he would be. So they're trying to, obviously they'd wish for a safety car now, because then you'd only lose 11 seconds, and he'd be in front of around Charles Leclerc for P4. But they're just seeing what they can do. Otherwise, building a tyre offset. And that's such a piece of engineer jargon. I'll let you explain what they're trying to do. Team radio.
Well, let Max talk first.
Okay, start 2, E-cup on Russell.
E-cup.
I like it. So they do have a plan.
Yeah. Do they really want a safety car now? I'm not sure a safety car is really what Mercedes would fancy, because the longer they can hang these medium tyres out and keep in the lead, the more it might bring a soft tyre into play later on.
And we believe Hamilton may try a one-stop.
Or do they want a safety car or a pit stop now to go onto the hard tyre? They've got choices.
Yeah, I think hard tyre they'll be very happy with seeing how Fernando went on the hard tyre, and also Lando Norris. But the only thing with the Mercedes, they do take a while to get their tyres up to working temperature.
So maybe a safety car would help.
Yeah.
Until the restart. And then they've got another problem.
Ted was right.
Yeah. We'll just go through it all. It's a bit like Hannah Schmidt and her team will do. They'll go through all the various potential outcomes of this race, and the computer will simulate around about 9 billion of them on a Saturday night. Then they'll come up with a 1 or 3 or 5 or 6 that they're going to stick with for race day.
I'm not sure they expected this one.
No. But to be honest, I kind of did, because I kind of went into this race thinking, well, the Ferraris are going to start on the softs because they want to get past Max, and if I think that, then Red Bull are going to think the Ferraris are going to start on softs, so we'll start on the soft too. And if we think all of that, Mercedes are going to start on the mediums because it's their best chance to go longer. And it does seem like an easy plan.
Well, if Mercedes are doing a one-stop, this is a really, really tricky situation for Max. You know, he's got tyres that are 19 laps newer than the Mercedes in front, and he still is struggling to follow George.
Yeah. Following here, not easy at all, even with the new cars for this year.
So this is looking good. Lewis 16.7, Verstappen 16.0.
I think it's looking very good, because Lewis Hamilton's got a buffer between himself and Max Verstappen. Mercedes are running 1 and 2, and Verstappen isn't going fast enough at the moment to make the overtake down the main straight, which seems to be the only place really you can get past.
Yeah, no, totally. Now he has the DRS wide open, he's in that gap. We'll see how close he can get before the main straight.
Well, that's how the gap has come down in the last few laps. If you are just joining us, this is quite an absorbing Dutch Grand Prix. We're on lap 27 out of 72. If you want to watch the highlights alongside the live action, Sky Q and Sky Glass customers can press their red button while we listen to Jensen Button, and down the main straight, Max Verstappen's probably got the overtaking button pressed firmly and fully and deployed it. Russell goes to the inside, and Russell tries to hang on, but he can't quite do it, and that was necessary for Max Verstappen, and it delighted the fans who are all stood up in the grandstands wherever they're watching this race. Verstappen up to second.
Yeah, I think George will look back on that and think he went the wrong way. You know, it's easy to say now, but outside line there, you can brake later, you can carry the speed through the corner, you're pinched at the apex. So George should have stayed on the outside there, but, you know, it's difficult to judge when a car's coming at you like Max was.
Story of my life, Jensen, 50-50 choice, I'll always get it wrong. Left or right, oh no, went the wrong way. That really was necessary for Max Verstappen, who's chased down one Mercedes, now he's got the next one to chase down.
He has. Looking at Lewis on the exit there, he looks like he's pushing. He pulls to the right-hand side, leaves the door open perfectly for Max to break late, carry that speed, ran the banked corner. If it was a flat corner, maybe not such a great side to be on the outside, but perfect. Worked out perfect for him. Look at the crowd.
Well, they love that. Max Verstappen loved that. Mercedes would have expected it, might have seen it coming, would probably have wished for it to happen a few laps later. Hamilton continues to lead this race as the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo comes in for another pit stop and onto the hard tyres. Karun Chandhok, down to you at Sky Race Control.
Yeah, thanks, Crofty. I guess the question is, how can Lewis win this Grand Prix? He's 2.6 seconds ahead of Max. On the last lap, he was over a second slower. 8/10 on this particular one. So they both got one stop to go, isn't it? That's what we're getting out of that Leclerc message. And the reality is, yeah, he can win this, but he's got to hold off a charging Red Bull that's creeping up to him.
It's like 2021 all over again, isn't it?
It is, and the thing is, you know, if Lewis pits now, he's going to come out on a fresh set of tyres and probably be quicker than Max. So when Max pits, he's going to be behind Lewis again. So this is a really important few laps of this race. Max chasing down Lewis. Can't be a nice feeling for Lewis, but then Lewis is leading a Grand Prix.
If he can get to lap 38, 39, you can put the hard tyres on and make that one stop work, do you think?
I think he can put the hard tyres on now and make it work. Yeah, definitely. But you know, if you're going to go to the softs, yeah, it's a lot later in the race. But Lewis definitely got the hurry up. You saw him pushing, and yeah, one of the Mercedes is coming in for a stop.
Mercedes were 1-2 here in 1955 with Fangio and Moss. They've been running 1-2, but George Russell got overtaken, and Lewis Hamilton was leading. And now with Max Verstappen charging after him, it's time to pit Lewis Hamilton. And well, Mercedes fans throughout the world, Jenson Button, will be hoping you're right here, that it is a good time to put the hard compound tyre on and he can go to the end of the race.
Yeah, he can definitely go to the end of the race. It's just how quickly that tyre works for him. Does Max pit now? He's only 11 laps into his stint, but does he pit? You know, that's the interesting thing. This is where the strategists from Red Bull are really going to, you know, come into play.
And another thing that's really played into Mercedes' hands here, that Sainz pit stop, where the tyre wasn't ready, was so slow. Hamilton comes out behind Perez, but so far ahead of Carlos Sainz, he's under no pressure whatsoever. He can bring the tyres in, warm them up, treat them gently and cuddle them nicely to his heart's content.
Exactly, cuddle them nicely, I like that. Yeah, I think the whole pit crew for Red Bull will be studying Lewis's sector times on this first outlap to see where he is with that hard tyre.
Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly has got Zhou Guanyu behind him. Zhou Guanyu's been in quite a scrap this race so far for around about 12th, 13th, 14th place. Ted, we'll go down to you.
Well, I'll keep an eye on whether Verstappen pits. If he does to get track position, then he'll need the 21 seconds on Hamilton. He doesn't have it at the moment. It's 19 seconds Verstappen to Hamilton. So if Verstappen pushes now and gets that track position gap that he needs, then that will do. I think they will think about covering him. But this has to be, Crofty, the first track this year where it's proved that these new, better racing, easier to overtake cars have had a really hard time, isn't it? Don't you think? We've seen that, you know, it's in the past tracks where it's been difficult to overtake. These new cars have made it easier, no doubt. But the first time of the season coming here, that hasn't proved to be the case, and track position is definitely king.
Absolutely, but what we are seeing is cars being able to run closer to the car in front, and that is the key.
Just keeping out the hard tyre, but I don't think it will be good. Already feeling this tyre.
Yep, understood.
Well, that's contrary to what a lot of others are thinking. And Zhou Guanyu, well, wanted to get past Pierre Gasly there. Did Gasly move at the wrong place again?
No, I just think he moved very late again.
Yeah. So that rather caused the Alfa to back off a touch. So Mercedes, who's coming in? Hamilton, by the way, warming up his tyres quite nicely here. I say who's coming in. Of course we know it's George Russell. Fastest middle sector of the race so far for Lewis Hamilton. It's only taken a couple of laps and those tyres seem to be now working very well indeed. It's the hard tyre that is going on to George Russell's Mercedes. His teammate Lewis Hamilton moves through into fourth place. Russell will come out in fifth place because Carlos Sainz is still a long way behind in the Ferrari. It's not been a race to remember for Sainz so far. Not been the greatest race really for Charles Leclerc either, who was struggling to keep tabs with Max Verstappen in the early stages. Russell comes out ahead of Latifi, who has been lapped in this race. Verstappen leads from Leclerc, and after him comes Sergio Perez, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Carlos Sainz is running in 6th place. But let's try and sum it up, Jensen, as simply as we possibly can. The top 6, 4 of them are on a 2-stopper. 2 of them seem to be on a 1-stopper.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton's in P5, and he does not have to stop again. So he is in the pound seat right now. I really think so. You know, I think with Max, he's going to probably try and run as long as he can, so we can get a bigger difference in laps on his last set of tyres. So he has that advantage.
So going to the end, Lewis 7 seconds ahead.
And Lewis is about 7/10 quicker than Max Verstappen at the moment.
The crucial thing here, Verstappen at the moment is 19 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton. So even if they pitted now, Verstappen's not going to pit now, he'd come out behind Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen's tyres will start to go off. Hamilton on fresher tyres already has more pace and is closing that gap on Max Verstappen. If Verstappen is to win for a 2nd year in a row here, he's going to have to overtake Lewis Hamilton on the track, all things being equal, between now and when he gets close enough to him. Nico Rosberg is watching this race alongside our presentation team this weekend. Nico, Verstappen's going to have to overtake Hamilton to win a race. We haven't said that this year, have we?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I am on the edge of my seat here. This is so exciting. And also, it seems that hard tire is working beautifully for Lewis. So that's another big positive, and he's really in there at the moment for a chance for the win. His problem, though, is he's going to come up to Perez very soon, and how quickly can he get by Perez? It will be essential for him to clear him quickly. So let's follow the progress.
Well, at the moment, Jensen Button, thank you, Nico, for the time being. At the moment, Lewis Hamilton in the high 115s, Perez in the high 116s. That's not going to be too much opposition, is it?
Well, they've got good straight line speed, haven't they, the Red Bulls? So, you know, it's only going to take a couple of laps from Perez to slow Hamilton down to give Max the advantage back. So this is, it's going to be interesting when he catches him in probably 2 laps' time.
Remember Abu Dhabi and the middle stages of that race where Perez was the fighting like an animal against Lewis Hamilton? Might have to fight like a zoo today to try and keep Lewis Hamilton at bay, if you can fight like a zoo.
Penguins are in a zoo, they're not so fighty, are they? But Russell's just done the purple lap, fastest lap of the race, half a second quicker than Hamilton.
Yeah, coming alive for Mercedes here. Meanwhile, into turn 1, Valtteri Bottas and Mick Schumacher. Bottas, whoa, that was close. Really, Mick Schumacher's really back out of that one.
Yeah, you can see again though, the outside line through turn 1 is the place to be. Apart from if you get wiped out by the guy on the inside, which almost happened.
Yeah, didn't it just? Into the pits comes Mick Schumacher while he makes his pit stop. Corinne Chandler, we'll head to you.
The Red Bull pit wall have been telling Max Verstappen that the Mercedes drivers are doing no tyre saving. The implication being they're pushing hard to the end of the race. They don't think Mercedes are going to 2-stop, especially if they keep this pace up.
Hamilton now sets a new fastest lap of the race, and 1.5 seconds, 1.2 seconds faster than Perez.
We don't believe we can manage to do plan C.
Meanwhile, Ferrari are running through the alphabet of strategy and finding no love there at all. So, plan D?
I think plan C was a 1-stop. Do you not think?
Yeah. What's plan D?
Well, I don't know. I guess they're going to go for A or B. Which would be a 2-stop, putting the softs. Would have thought they would think of putting the softs on.
So yes, where does Charles Leclerc fit into this at the moment? He's 8 seconds behind Max Verstappen, our race leader, and we are looking from Sergio Perez's rear wing to see Lewis Hamilton lapping cars and getting closer and closer to Sergio Perez. And I just wonder, on the pace that Hamilton's showing here, is this a chance for an overtake down the main straight, because they're coming through the 18-degree banking of the final corner, and Hamilton is right on Perez's tail, and he's got that DRS, 16.5 kilometres extra speed down that main straight. Hamilton has to go the long way round. Perez locks up. Perez forces Hamilton even wider and then loses speed in doing so. And what kind of animal was that, Sergio Perez? That was scrappy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's so tricky because he's got the inside line. There's a lot of camber there. The front inside's lifted off the ground, a bit of locking, and it's pushed him wide. That wasn't on purpose.
No.
The exit was, though.
See, once he realised he was in trouble, go a little bit wider. Still gave him a car's width.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't that far alongside when he actually got to the exit, but I think that was always going to be a closing gap, wasn't it, when you're racing against Max's teammate.
So, plan A for Lewis Hamilton to get past Sergio Perez didn't quite go the way that he was expecting, but look how the pace of that Mercedes is keeping tabs on the Red Bull, and even on the next DRS zone, he's almost alongside Perez getting into that chicane. The crowd willing Sergio Perez on here because everything Perez is doing can maybe help Max Verstappen at the end of this race. Sebastian Vettel makes his second pit stop of this race, and we go back to the main straight once again, and the main action. It's the main event, isn't it? Sergio Perez currently in third. Lewis Hamilton maybe targeting a win today, needs to get past the Red Bull. This time he's clear. Perez doesn't lock up. Hamilton moves up into the top three.
Beautiful move around the outside, nicely judged on the brakes there. Oh, and he's straight out into traffic.
I mentioned Vettel had pitted. He came out of the pit stop right where Hamilton didn't want him. Hamilton just about hangs on to third place. And Perez there, just for one moment, thought, I've got half a chance here, because Sebastian Vettel arrived on the scene when no one was really expecting, and at pretty much the wrong time for the Mercedes. So much dust and marbles on the track before Vettel eventually does make way for the two cars. Did he hang around there a little bit longer than he should have done?
Yeah, he's always going to push it, isn't he, at this point in the race. He was never going to overtake there through turn 6. Here's the move again. He's on the marbles on the inside, and that's another thing. So they've got a lot less grip on that on the inside line. Lovely move for Lewis around the outside. Perfect. And now he's got to get after Charles Leclerc. I don't know how much time he lost there, but I'm guessing he's lost 3 seconds probably in the last 2 laps.
That's a great guess. That's exactly how much he's just lost. Seriously, you can pick my lottery numbers for me next week with guesses like that. Could Vettel have kept out of the way a little bit sooner? Was there a potential to do so? Or if he moved to the one side off the racing line, does he then influence the other car behind and get in the way even further?
It's tricky. Look at that. Yeah, oh, that's Checo's time. But sorry, he's just lost 3.7 seconds to Max. It's a tricky one. He's come out of the pits. You're not really sure where you are at that moment in time, what race you're in, unless your engineer's telling you.
So the gap between Verstappen and Hamilton is now 20 seconds, because Lewis Hamilton's lost 3 seconds. Do Red Bull gamble in a moment to get Max Verstappen in, to try and get him in now before he loses any time to Hamilton in clean air, to see if there's a possibility of getting in and staying ahead once they made their second pit stop? In the meantime, Ted, down to you.
That was great stuff, wasn't it? That was plan OMG with Lewis and Checo Perez. But yeah, they're going to have to make a decision. But whatever happens, unless Max can get these tyres to the end, which I don't think he can, Max is going to have to overtake Lewis. But don't forget about Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Ferrari's last chance, last hope of a podium is Leclerc here this afternoon. I'm keeping an eye on his lap times, and he's half a second consistently slower than Verstappen. So with Hamilton being in the mix there as well, Leclerc has to show a bit of pace, otherwise he could potentially end up off the podium. But he's going okay.
Thanks, Ted. Down the main straight again. This time it's George Russell on Sergio Perez, and George Russell has got the pace to make that move cleanly, and there is nobody coming out of the pit lane this time around to keep that battle going on for just a few moments longer. Russell up into 4th place. Mercedes going for the one-stop strategy here on the hard compound tyre. Verstappen and Leclerc ahead of them are having to stop again in this race, and we can see George's overtake.
Yeah, nice easy one that for him. I think Checo hurt his tyres quite a lot fighting with Lewis, but you know, Max Verstappen, they want to pit him as late as they can, so he's got the freshest tyres at the end of the race to really challenge Lewis. But the issue they have is that George Russell isn't that far behind Lewis Hamilton, and he doesn't want to drop behind Lewis and George Russell.
Absolutely. Max Verstappen continues to lead.
Max, what are your thoughts on tyre compounds?
This doesn't really feel spectacular.
Understood.
So please don't give me a medium, even though I've got another set. You could give me a hard tyre if you want. I've got a new set of those, or you can give me a used soft, but probably the hard tyre. Verstappen continues to lead, and he's just moved in to the top 10 all-time lap leaders in Formula One. He's passed Niki Lauda today, and his, well, de facto father-in-law, Nelson Piquet, as well, in that particular list, as Red Bull have gone over 5,000 laps led in their history in this race as well. They only needed 3, I think, in this race to make it 5,000, and that's the 6th constructor off the top of my head to do that in Formula 1.
If they pit Max now, he will come out behind George Russell. So he might as well stay out now, wait till close to the end, either stick mediums on or the soft tyre.
Yeah, George Russell starting to find pace now. He's got a bit of clean air too. The Mercedes expected to move this slow, to work this smoothly during the course of today. Did the fight between Red Bull and Ferrari, like Moses and the Red Sea, open up a path for Mercedes to try and march through at high speed?
I mean, no one's talked about Ferrari. I mean, no one. There's only us 3 in here, but no one's talked about Ferrari. I mean, they're 10 seconds behind Max, who is going to be a chunk behind the Mercedes. We could have a Mercedes 1-2 here.
Like we did in 1955 with Fangio and Moss. That would be very high round the bank there for the Red Bull. Just caught my attention a bit. The strategist feverishly working to try and find a plan here. But you're right, Ferrari just haven't got that race pace today. I think even with Carlos Sainz in the mix, they wouldn't have had that race pace. Sergio Perez is coming in for his stop, and it's the hard tyre that goes on. Now, this is data gathering as well, isn't it?
Exactly. Great data gathering. But then again, Max will have a pace advantage, as we've seen all weekend on Checo as well. But Max has just pumped in a 15.8. It's a quick lap on an old set of tyres, so I don't know if that's because he's got everything turned up to the max for a pit stop, or he's just seeing what those tyres can do.
Well, let's see how quickly they warm up on that Red Bull, because Perez has come out just in front of Fernando Alonso, behind Lando Norris in 6th for the McLaren. Alonso is going to be giving the hurry up to Perez all the way through these wonderful swooping corners, left and then right, and dropping down the hill too. Sebastian Vettel under investigation for ignoring blue flags. That'll be when he came out of the pits in front of Hamilton and Perez. So the stewards are going to have a little look at that. See a few more camera angles than we did before they make up their mind. It's not particularly a great race so far for Aston Martin either. Lance Stroll has found himself in 11th currently on the hard tyre. Sebastian Vettel down in 16th. Stroll has stopped twice, as has Sebastian Vettel too. This race, the hard tyre has become the better race tyre when some thought the medium might be the best option today.
Yeah, it's really surprising, and I think everyone saw what Fernando did when he put that hard tyre on, and Fernando started a couple of places behind his teammate, and now he's in front and 5 seconds up the road.
Lap 42 out of 72. This race is flying by. Ted Kravitz.
Always flies by when you're having fun, Crofty. And the other person, the other person who's chosen that, it turned out to be correct, but who would have known strategy of starting on the medium and then going to the hard, what Mercedes have done, is Lando Norris. And he started on the medium, has now gone to the hard, and is currently ahead of Sergio Perez, but I'm sure Perez will have something to say about that. Going to the end, and is holding his position behind Carlos Sainz, who's kind of, trudging to the end, bemoaning that lost tyre.
Thanks, Ted.
And hard is faster than expected on the Mercedes.
So give me the hard tyre then, is probably what the reply came back. Lando Norris, by the way, his 75th Grand Prix start. Talk about time flying when you're having fun. 75 Grand Prix now for Lando Norris. 7th in the championship. Might be on for 7th in the race today after starting 7th on the grid. Lucky 7s all round for Lando Norris. As we ride on board with Sergio Perez, who is currently the man behind Lando Norris on the hard tyre, fresher tyre too. Let's look at the pace advantage of that Red Bull down the straight. This could be quite tasty going into turn 1. Sergio Perez thought for 1 second there was a gap on the inside, but it didn't happen for him. Perez has got some pace now, hasn't he?
He has 14.9, but yeah, stuck up behind Norris, so he's not going to be able to use those tyres. Interesting though, I think with George, the team will be telling him to push as hard as he can.
Yeah.
With Lewis, he can back off a bit, he can look after the tyres. I don't know if he is, but George is the one that's on the, on the cusp of coming out in front of.
In plan C, we will go to overtaken and we will finish P4. 30 laps to go.
So what do they want to do? Try and hang Charles Leclerc out until the end of the race? Can they possibly do that? Is that what they're maybe looking at Ferrari? Have they got an alternative to it? Sergio Perez with the fastest lap of the race, by the way. Just watching his times, it was about 0.3 faster than Lewis Hamilton on that particular lap, and that's what they'll be taking into account on the Red Bull pit wall when they think about when to bring Max in. Right, hold your breath, keep your fingers crossed. Carlos Sainz is coming in for a pit stop, and if one man needs a really smooth pit stop here this afternoon, it's Carlos Sainz, as Perez on Norris once again. You can see the Ferrari making the pit, you can see Perez making the move, and you can see Perez ahead of Lando Norris into turn 1. And it's a 3-second pit stop for Carlos Sainz, so it was a lot smoother, as by the side of the track, Yuki Tsunoda stops.
Tires not fitted, tires not fitted.
Copy, slow down.
Is that a safety car?
That's got to be a safety car, surely. That car is going to need pushing away. He's stopped the car. He says the tyres aren't fitted. The debrief has started on the AlphaTauri pit wall as to exactly what happened during the pit stop. No notice of a safety car yet. They were standing by at Red Bull. Verstappen's just gone through turn 3, because if a safety car was called straight away, you can bet your bottom dollar he'd have dived in, but Tsunoda's kept the car running.
Tires are okay, start again, tires are okay.
And the tyres are fitted as far as the team are concerned, so Tsunoda is allowed to rejoin this race. So for one moment there was a potential safety car which would have seen Verstappen and Leclerc coming straight in, because you lose less time under a safety car. But Tsunoda, he's on the racetrack there, Jensen, still going very, very slowly.
I'm very confused. Just as Max has just pumped in a 15.6, his quickest lap for 20-odd laps.
Let's have a look here. Watch the front left as it goes out. Does that look a little bit wobbly? I'm told that was the tyre that might be a little loose in Tsunoda's mind.
The bit I don't understand is the driver says there's a loose tyre, and the team say no, there isn't. So what's he feeling?
Yeah, and I assume Tsunoda's going to come into the pits as the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc does make its move into the pits, and Lewis Hamilton moves up to 2nd, and George Russell moves up to 3rd. Hard tyres fitted to the end of the race for Charles Leclerc. Verstappen's just done a 1:17.2. Hamilton's just done a 1:15.7, as there goes Mick Schumacher on the Aston Martin of Sebastian Vettel. We saw these two getting lovely and friendly into the chicane a while back at the early stages of this race. They might be getting a bit friendly once more as Schumacher tries to get past his old mate. If Verstappen doesn't come in soon, he's not going to have much to defend with, or to fight with, I should say, at the end of this race against Hamilton.
Yeah, he's gonna have to pit, I think, at some point, but they're trying to leave it as late as possible. Now that he's behind both Mercedes, they might as well, and then they've got a bigger pace advantage with the newer tyres.
Ted, down to you.
This is really weird. So what are they checking now? Something around Yuki's belts and making it looking. But this is all very. I know we're near the North Sea, Crofty, but this is fishy to me. They changed that front left was slow coming off, and they put a new tyre on.
Yeah, the hard to soft.
Yeah,
and now they're looking at the belts and trying. Are you suggesting they're trying to make out it was a seatbelt problem, not a tyre problem?
Well, I've got to check with my lawyer before I make something suggestion like that. But yeah, I mean, obviously, had there been I'm just wondering what on earth is going on, because your seatbelts don't just suddenly come undone at a pit stop. And what a coincidence they changed the tyres, that's all. But if it had been a safety car, of course, that would have saved Max Verstappen's bacon in this race.
Yeah, it would. Verstappen, by the way, last lap, 0.2 slower than Lewis Hamilton.
Something wrong, something strange in the rear, something strange. Deep is broken, I think.
Stop.
Right, so there wasn't a safety car. There might be a safety car, unless Yuki Tsunoda can put this AlphaTauri somewhere safe and off the track. Coming out of turn 3, he's keeping off the racing line, as through went Sergio Perez, but he's going to park up by the side of the track here. It doesn't look like he's parked up right by an escape hatch, so yellow flags being waved there. What do race control do? Everyone stands by for new tyres. That is for George Russell, I think. Red for Lewis Hamilton, isn't it?
They're not, and I think the call earlier for Virtue safety car has been deployed.
So VSC, race gets neutralised, make a pit stop here, and it's about 10 seconds faster in terms of your race time than under a normal conditions.
The biggest problem is when the car is topped off the circuit here, it's in sand.
Yeah.
So you can't move a car manually by the marshals. Normally that's the issue, and that's why it takes a lot longer here than most tracks.
So that's the pit stops made so far. Max Verstappen has to make another pit stop. Lewis Hamilton doesn't. He has run 2 different dry compounds, which is what you're requested to do. George Russell is in a similar boat. Charles Leclerc has come in for his second stop, so he doesn't have to stop again. Lando Norris is stopping again. And that's soft tyres going on for Lando Norris. They had to wait for the Alpine to pit. And this is the problem when you come in. If other cars follow you in, you might get stranded in that pit box for a little bit longer than you want. I'm looking at Max Verstappen now. He's making his way around the final bank, and they are going to bring Max Verstappen in. And it's the hard tyres going on. Now, he will make his stop. Lewis Hamilton will be making his way round the penultimate corner now, but of course he's doing that at much less speed than he normally would do in the race. Verstappen might just hang on to the lead here by making a pit stop behind the virtual safety car.
Looks like one of the Mercedes is coming in as well.
So into the pit lane comes Lewis Hamilton. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Yeah, so there's enough of a gap for them to do it, but there you see George Russell, so they are going to stack. That was good for Mercedes because they had the position as first people in the pit lane to be able to stack their cars, and that was nice work. But what an advantage this is handed to Max Verstappen. So I thought we were going to see chaos in the pits with everybody coming in. We're going to have the second McLaren in as well. Let's see how this shakes out. Advantage Verstappen.
I think what's happened here, Jensen, is Mercedes knew Verstappen would pit and be ahead. So they thought we should pit as well and at least be on fresher tyres.
Let's go, guys. It's a good pit stops, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, and also they've gone for the medium tyre. So great thinking by Mercedes. They're making the best out of a situation they didn't expect. And they've gone for the medium tyre. So they're on a better tyre than Max and obviously 13 seconds behind.
Yuki Tsunoda, whatever was wrong with the AlphaTauri, wheels, seatbelts, who knows?
What that? The seat belts would have been, I'm guessing that he thought he was getting out the car.
Okay, good point.
So he's probably loosened his seat belts. They probably
point.
tightened them back up.
Okay.
I'm sure it was just loosened.
And what Mercedes have done is to jump Charles Leclerc as well with those pit stops. I mean, they were ahead anyway, but they've managed to come in, make the pit stop, stay ahead of the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. It's not worked into Leclerc's hands at all because he made his pit stop before that virtual safety car. What I don't quite understand with the AlphaTauri is why it stopped, then went into the pits, then came back out onto the track again, and then stopped. Because surely something was showing in the data for Yuki Tsunoda to have stopped or retired from the race in the pit lane.
Well, he thinks the tyre's loose, and obviously the engineers have gone to the mechanics. Was there a tyre loose? And they're all like, no, they've gone on properly. Maybe they just thought that it was something that he felt on a new set of tyres, I don't know. But he's like, okay, well, I'll come back round to the pits and let's try it again. But no, they still have the same issue.
Virtual safety car is ending. What it has given us is quite a grandstand finish to this race, but not potentially the way that we thought it was going to go. Lewis Hamilton is about 16 seconds now behind Max Verstappen with 23 laps to go of this race on faster, fresher tyres. We are going green once again. If you've missed all the action so far, you want to watch the highlights, press your red button. If you're a Sky Q or a Sky Glass customer and you watch the highlights alongside the live action, you do not want to miss the live action here because it's Verstappen leading and Hamilton chasing with George Russell in third place for Mercedes, Charles Leclerc fourth and Sergio Perez fifth. We're watching Fernando Alonso leading Lance Stroll down the straight. Stroll back up into the points again, and behind these two comes Pierre Gasly a little further back.
Unusual choice. Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, they both pitted under the virtual safety car, and they were both on hard tyres. And Alonso's gone for the soft tyre, but it's put him quite a few places behind Ocon, who was in front of. So he's sort of 9-10 seconds off of Ocon's pace when he was 5 seconds up the road.
There's your race leader, who thought he might have to be overtaking Lewis Hamilton to win this race.
VSC stuffed us.
Hamilton is going to have to overtake Max Verstappen. The gap 12.6 seconds. The thing about virtual safety cars, it neutralises the race, but when the green light, and it's done randomly, is displayed and we can go racing again, depending where you are on the track, can have quite a bearing. Because if Jenson Button, you're about to come onto the straight when it's green, you're going to go a lot faster than if you've just done it on a virtual safety car speed.
Yeah, it's really tough when it halves the pit lane time. That's really tough for Lewis and for George. I don't know if there's something in the future we can do with virtual safety cars in a zone, not for the whole lap.
Yeah.
So where on stint 1 was good, this is going to be a shorter stint, lighter fuel, so happy to push.
Well, it was a bit snappy from Max Verstappen, wasn't it, on the power then?
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? I didn't think it'd have to push that hard at this moment. He's 13 seconds up the road from Lewis, but 21 laps to go. Lewis on a softer tyre than Max. It's not over.
It's not over for Fernando Alonso either. He just set a new fastest lap of the race. Verstappen has then taken that fastest lap off him, but Alonso is catching Lando Norris. 12.6 seconds was the gap at the end of the last lap between Verstappen and Hamilton. 12.8 seconds now is the gap between Verstappen and Hamilton. George Russell, 2.7 seconds behind Hamilton, has now just set the new fastest lap of the race. Then comes Leclerc, then comes Perez. Ted, down to you.
Yeah, so quite right that the FIA are going to investigate this. If Yuki's wise enough to know if he feels that a wheel is loose, so quite right the FIA are going to investigate this. We might be here till late, Crofty. We'll see how that goes. But I think Lewis's frustration is obvious. Before, had that not happened, Verstappen was going to have to overtake Lewis on a track that's very difficult to overtake. And now Lewis has got to overtake Verstappen on a track that's very difficult to overtake.
It has had a dramatic effect on the outcome of this race. A car was sent out, the driver thought that a wheel was loose, he was then told to carry on, he returned to the pits, the tyres were changed, he was sent out again, and then 4 corners later he stopped. And it's given us a completely different complexion in this race. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel, who you remember made a pit stop earlier, came out ahead of Hamilton and Perez, who were having their scrap. He's just been given a 5-second time penalty for ignoring blue flags, and that one doesn't surprise me either.
Yeah, it's hurt the emotion and the adrenaline of this race a little bit. It's gone, hasn't it? With we thought Max was going to have to try and fight past both Mercedes, but now it's the other way around, and they're all on new tyres. So a lot more difficult for Lewis to chase down Max.
Still a long way to go here, though.
Yeah, I mean, what's great is this pack sort of from 6th back to 9th. I think there's going to be a lot of action there with Fernando fighting his way through.
Yeah, this means quite a lot as well in the battle for 4th in the championship coming into this race. There was a 20-point gap in that battle for 4th. Fernando Alonso would like to help extend that advantage and get past Lando Norris, but nothing doing on that occasion, but he's going to hang it out as much as he can. Norris gave him width, and Fernando eventually had to back off before he hit the gravel.
Yeah, Fernando pushed that all the way until the end, and it looked like he did that for a reason. I don't know if he's trying to say, well, he didn't give me room on the exit. He's very clever in that situation, isn't he, Fernando?
So still, George Russell is setting very fast sector times. Still out in front is Max Verstappen, and the man in the middle of that is Lewis Hamilton, who's going faster on this lap than Max Verstappen. And what do we reckon to this for car control? And, well, Alonso, he'll stay in a dangerous place for only so long before the danger is going to bite him. And that's why he backed out. That could have been so much worse for him.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with Charles. Oh, he's finally got a good lap, but he was sort of 3.5 seconds off the pace. Now he's put in a 15.1, so a little bit better, but still 1.2 seconds slower than the Mercedes, who were half a second up on Max.
On that last lap, Esteban Ocon has only stopped once in this race. They decided at Alpine that was the best way to try and bring him into play. There is Esteban Ocon, but he's about to get swallowed up, eaten alive, overtaken probably eventually by Sainz and Norris and Alonso coming very fast behind him.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. Hopefully it's not just going to be a DRS train. They're all on relatively new tyres, apart from Ocon in front. So Sainz is in the quickest car of those three, but whether he can do anything with it, we'll have to wait and see.
So that gap coming down all the while out in front. Verstappen's on the hard tyre, Hamilton's on the medium tyre. It's 11.3 seconds currently. And Hamilton is consistently setting better sector times. Ahead of Verstappen, Nicholas Latifi a couple of corners ahead, as Hamilton now sets a new fastest lap of the race. And Hamilton has got Gasly in between himself and Verstappen in terms of back markers that could influence things. Ted, down to you.
So those who didn't stop under the virtual safety car and those who did are a great game. It's a great game of the tortoise and the hare now. And Esteban Ocon is going to have to be the widest tortoise you've ever seen, Crofty, because he stayed out. His tyres are 35 laps old, and he's got Sainz behind him on 10 years.
Oh, we got another car stopping,
Bottas.
and it's Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo, and I think this is down the main straight where Valtteri Bottas has stopped. It's right before the first corner. This could be another safety car. Yellow flags are now waving. Sainz, wow, made the move on Esteban Ocon, but I'm not sure he got ahead before he got to the incident. Really should have backed off, but stayed ahead of Esteban Ocon.
He overtook under the yellows. I mean, he was alongside going past the car, and then even if he wasn't there, he still went past, and he still would have been in the yellow zone. Green flag would have been just around the corner. So,
but you just wonder, is this another safety car?
I think I was ahead by the yellow flag. Check. If not, I let him by, but I don't know. Check.
Yeah, checking.
How does he let him by straight away without getting overtaken by Lando Norris?
It's not even that. I mean, you have to say it didn't look good passing a car when there's one stopped on the inside of the circuit. So I'm not sure they would just let him give the place back. But you would say that this is a safety car, not a virtual, with a car right on the track.
Believe to let him by, let Ocon by, is Lando right here.
Come on.
Well, at least the only overtaking place is gone now. So
yeah, well, that for the moment, Bottas is still down there. Ocon's ahead of Norris, ahead of Alonso. Sainz is ahead of all three of them. And if he slows down Carlos Sainz to let Esteban Ocon go past,
why is he stopping? What's he doing?
They're all slowing down because it's double waved yellows down there.
But that was
safety car. Okay. That's why they're slowing down, Jensen.
Yeah, you saw that.
They did slam the brakes on a little bit. Right, so behind the safety car, they can sort that out a bit easier. Verstappen's been told to get into the pits. Soft tyres going on Max Verstappen's Red Bull. Will Mercedes decide to pit Lewis Hamilton as well? Or do they stay out with Lewis Hamilton? Ted, are you calling the strategy for us here, Ted?
He's got to stay out. He's got to stay out. Hamilton's got to stay out.
Hamilton's going to take the lead here.
What are Red Bull doing? This is weird.
Hamilton is going to take the lead of this race after Red Bull pitted Max Verstappen. And George Russell might just get ahead of Max Verstappen here too. So Mercedes are back 1-2 in the lead. Did Red Bull think that they were going to get caught by Mercedes anyway? So what they needed was tyres that they could attack Mercedes with, and the hard tyre might not be that one. Charles Leclerc pits too.
Yeah, I'm a little bit gobsmacked, but it's a safety car, so they're all going to be bunched up. I guess they were just worried by the pace deficit, which is sort of half a second, but the medium tyre is going to degrade, and that hard tyre would have been the one to the end of the race. But now he's in P3. A lot of work to do, and there's a lot of marbles offline. It's not easy to overtake.
But Mercedes, traditionally this season, struggle with warm-up a bit more than the Red Bull. Red Bull are going to be with Max Verstappen right behind the Mercedes pair when the safety car finally lets people go again. And Hamilton and Russell are going to have to try and hang on here for the last few laps of this race, which was initially, I think, what they were expecting. A virtual safety car and 15 laps ago.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, this has made it amazing for us watching. Really exciting. But and you'd have to say Mercedes this year, they haven't had the quickest car most races, pretty much all the races, but their strategy and as a team, they've done such a good job.
So this is Valtteri Bottas. What happened to him?
Okay, Max, so
I lost the engine.
Right, so that was Valtteri Bottas with a little bit of Gianpiero Lambiase involved. This is Carlos Sainz. Where's the yellow flags? To be fair to him, he was already ahead, wasn't he, when they got to the yellow flag by about a front wing.
But then he's not, and then he is.
And he's not, and then he is.
So is that Ocon that's taken the play? No, it's a tricky one, that.
So is that Ocon backing off that caused Carlos Sainz to get ahead? Safety car's going to come through the pit lane, unsurprisingly, because of where Valtteri Bottas is parked. And now there's going to be an awful lot of activity. George Russell is going to put soft tyres on as he comes into the pits. I promise you that is George Russell. Lewis Hamilton also made a pit stop.
I'm so confused. Why would you do that as Mercedes? Wouldn't you want a car between them? Karun?
Yeah.
At race control, Karun Chandhok.
Yes, Crofty. George was straight on the radio saying, I would like the soft tyre. I'm losing tyre temp. I think he was worried about that warm-up that you were rightly talking about. Look at that! That could be an unsafe release.
Should be an unsafe release, I think. There, Karun, carry on.
Yeah, so I think that's... your point earlier about Mercedes warm-up, I think, concerned George. And he was on the radio saying, I need soft tyres. So I think that's what they called it for.
That was so unfair. That was so unfair for the Ferrari because it was such a tight pit exit and there were people in the way. So he's been let go thinking the pit lane's free and clear, but he's taken so long to get out, and that's why he's held up the Alpine.
Is there anyone who didn't come into the pits? that was quite the stampede. So here's George Russell, and he wants to come into the pits, and he's saying to the Williams, "Get out of my way."
Speed up.
Let's stop. Let's put the soft on. Wait, I'm losing the tyre. Let's need to put the soft on.
Right.
Stop. Box.
So they all came through the pit lane because the safety car was leading them through the pit lane. You saw the clock on Lewis Hamilton. That is an unsafe release, Carlos Sainz, on Fernando Alonso. You saw the clock running on Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton did not change his tyres.
I exited well ahead of the Renault, but there was the McLaren guys in front and I couldn't turn.
He is leading this race from Verstappen. Hamilton is still on the medium tyre. George Russell is on the soft tyre ahead of behind Max Verstappen on the track, because he's decided that is very much the tyre that he wants for the rest of this race. They all came through the pits, but the crucial thing here to bear in mind for the rest of this race, when we restart, Hamilton's on mediums, Verstappen's on softs, pressure softs too, and Hamilton might struggle a little bit with warm-up, but then can George Russell try and put pressure on Verstappen?
It was not unsafe. I just saw on the cameras it's not unsafe. The other car accelerated the braking. He saw me exiting. Clearly, I'm seeing it on the cameras. If they give me a penalty for that, it's totally fake.
And this is Carlos Sainz, Ted Kravitz, trying to explain what happened with Esteban Ocon at the end of the straight, as Valtteri Bottas' Alfa Romeo was to the side.
Well, I think there's one person in this 100,000 crowd who agrees with Carlos Sainz, because that was definitely an unsafe. And not only is he going to get a penalty for overtaking under yellows, but now Ferrari are going to get a fine for unsafe release. Is there any penalty Ferrari don't want to pick up today?
Not sure.
I'm so surprised Mercedes let George make that call, because now Lewis doesn't have anyone between him and Max on a soft set of tyres.
He doesn't, but what he does have is the rear gunner at the rear, as it were.
I'd definitely rather have a car in between me and Max Verstappen on soft tyres.
Yes, but then George Russell, is he thinking for himself that the best chance I've got of winning this race and winning a race for Mercedes, because I haven't done that yet, I'd rather like to, is to get on the soft tyres?
Oh, totally the right call for George, but I'm just surprised that Mercedes are okay with that call.
You know, Mercedes, they let their drivers race.
But they might not win the race because of it.
They might not win the race even if they stayed what they were doing. They might have won the race 30 laps ago with the strategy the way it was going. They might not have won the race when Yuki Tsunoda stopped. They might have won the race when Valtteri Bottas stopped. This has swung back and forth quite dramatically in the last half an hour.
Do we have any straightforward races anymore?
Nope.
We don't. It's good, isn't it?
It'll be hard to keep that car behind me, guys, now.
Yeah, copy Lewis, but yeah, let's give it everything.
Lewis agrees with me.
Right, safety cars coming in at the end of this lap. Nico Rosberg, you've got about 30 seconds to give us your viewpoint on this one.
No, unbelievable. I'm flat out rooting for Lewis here. I just hope he can keep Verstappen behind. That would be so damn awesome. But that medium tire is going to be so cold. It's going to be so hard. But if one person can do it, it's Lewis. And there's no DRS, remember, for the first 2 laps after safety car. So he might have enough time to warm those tires up again.
That is a very good point. Need to wait 2 laps, then the DRS becomes operational. Can George Russell get in the DRS range of Max Verstappen? So whilst Verstappen's looking to overtake, he might have to think about just defending a touch. Hamilton will keep them all at bay. When do you release here, Jensen, the start of a safety car resumption?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, are we talking to the team and, oh, look at the crowd, loving the action out there. I'm sure they're a little bit surprised that Max isn't leading the race, but here we go. Lewis has got to choose his moment. It's a long drag down to turn 1, but they don't have DRS.
You see the sand, can't you, when you go offline and when the drivers are warming their tyres up there? And that could have a bearing and could induce a few lockups too. Into the stadium section we go.
He's gone early, hasn't he? As in he's slowed down early.
Yeah. And the safety car, Bert Mailander, is away now. And so we're going to get racing again. Hamilton ahead of Verstappen. Russell ahead of Leclerc. Ferrari have been brought back into this one again. Sergio Perez is the other one on the medium tyres in the top 5. Sainz ahead of Alonso, ahead of Norris, ahead of Ocon and ahead of Stroll. That's the top 10. The only other car, every other car on soft tyres bar Hamilton and Sergio Perez. And away we go then. We're going green and Verstappen has got a decent toe behind Hamilton, and Verstappen is going wheel to wheel down the main straight with Hamilton, and Verstappen is ahead going into turn 1. Lewis Hamilton's been overtaken by Max Verstappen right at the start. George Russell holding off Charles Leclerc in 3rd place. That warm-up for Mercedes costing Hamilton at that moment. Then comes Carlos Sainz ahead of Sergio Perez. Behind Perez, Alonso, Norris, Ocon and Stroll. It's Verstappen once again that leads the Dutch Grand Prix.
It was that beautiful toe through turn 14, the banking corner. He was able to drag it behind him. Didn't even need the straight. It was alongside him before they crossed the start and finish line.
You almost thought, should Hamilton just wait a little bit longer and then halfway down the straight then start going so you can't pick up that toe? But that's all to be discussed in the post-race show. Hamilton is already a second behind Max Verstappen.
Oh, he's going to be devastated with that. I'm sure he thought there's a good possibility we can win this race. It can still happen. Everything's to play for still, but look at that toe he got through that corner, and Lewis just opened the gap and he threw down the inside, threw it down the outside on the main straight.
And what great timing. You're not allowed to overtake until you get to the line, and Verstappen was about, what, half a metre behind Hamilton when they got to the line. About 10 metres down the track, he was half a metre ahead. And that is now the distance that he has pulled out on the soft tyre over Lewis Hamilton. George Russell in 3rd place. Did Mercedes think about trying to find a way to swap Russell and Hamilton around? Because on the medium tyre, Hamilton hasn't got the pace at the moment to keep tracks with Max Verstappen. They
need to let them race now. After the call that they let George go to the soft, they need to just let them race and let Lewis fight for that P2.
Fernando Alonso in 7th place. Lando Norris right behind him. Then comes Esteban Ocon under pressure from Lance Stroll. Behind Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, then Alex Albon and Mick Schumacher. So we're going to get some DRS trains forming in a moment. And at the moment, we're getting 26 points going Max Verstappen's way in the championship. And another, where's Sergio Perez? Another 18 points. He's going to extend his advantage over his teammate who's currently 2nd in the championship. Let's look at Perez and Sainz a little bit further back and how they got very close, and how Sainz going round the outside is ahead of the Red Bull and ahead on the track and in 5th place.
Yeah, it was a nice move, wasn't it? Judged perfectly, just like Max's was. But no, it's been so much action. And Alpine, 7th and 9th. I bet McLaren didn't expect that from those two.
No, they certainly didn't. Trouble for McLaren. Ricciardo still running way down the field in 17th. And Lando Norris kind of fighting a battle, a team battle with just his own arms. Hamilton admitting that what happened was not great for Mercedes. and their strategy and maybe his part in it at the restart as well will all be talked about by the team afterwards, and I'm sure some honest assessments will come from Toto Wolff and the team when we get to talk to them at the end of 72 laps. And what a dramatic Dutch Grand Prix this has been this afternoon. But throughout all the drama, Max Verstappen has found his way back to the front of the field once more. DRS is enabled. Do Mercedes need to use that DRS for George Russell to get past Lewis Hamilton, because he's the car with the pace at the moment that might be able to catch Verstappen? Karoon, down to you at race control.
Not happy, Crofty. Lewis Hamilton is not happy. He's been on the radio complaining that Mercedes have not helped his cause with more colourful language.
Yes, we saw the asterisks. Hamilton struggling for pace out there, and his teammate 20 metres behind him, and his teammate is not going to be 20 metres behind for long. And oh dear, George Russell nearly ran straight into the back of his teammate before he manages to react at the very last moment. That wasn't team orders, that was scrappy and it was defensive, and Lewis Hamilton gave it as best he could. Russell was in grave danger of totally ruining Mercedes' afternoon there, with two cars retiring from the race. Somehow he managed to react in time.
I can't believe you guys me, man. I can't tell you right now.
He feels he's been put in a position, Jenson Button, where he has not been able to fight for the lead of this race.
Not in those words, but I do agree with him. I think they had a great opportunity with both cars in front of Max before the start. He wouldn't have been able to run past Lewis in turn one. He might have got past his George, but not Lewis. God, that was close, wasn't it? You could actually hear George having to back out of the throttle.
What should Mercedes have done?
They should have left them both on the same tyres. I think they should have both stayed on the medium tyre. And I think it would have been, Max still might have won this race, but it would have definitely been more difficult for him to pass both cars.
But if George Russell made the right call to go onto the soft compound tyre, then why should Mercedes hold him back? Hamilton might not even finish on the podium here, because right behind him is Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, and going round the banking of Tarzan corner, pretty much wheel to wheel. Hamilton under huge pressure here, but Russell made the right call to go onto those soft compound tyres. Mercedes were right to let him. Surely they want to win the race, and that's the best way you're going to do it.
I don't think they got a quick enough car to win the race. I think they had to strategize, and they, putting them both on the soft tyres. Lewis would have been second. Lewis would have been second. George would have been third, and they would have possibly finished second and third. But they want to win. Yeah, and that's why Lewis wanted to stay out on those mediums.
But that's the key, isn't it? That the soft tyre for both would have been the better option for Mercedes.
Yeah, definitely.
When you go different ways, one of them is going to be on the wrong tyre. And this is what we're finding at the moment. Last time Hamilton led a race as long into the race as he was leading here was Abu Dhabi in 2021, and he was not on the faster tyre on that particular evening, and Max Verstappen passed him, and it's happened again here in Zandvoort, but not on the final lap of this race. George Russell's last lap was 0.2 of a second slower than Max Verstappen's. Lewis Hamilton's last lap was 0.9 of a second slower than Charles Leclerc, and Charles Leclerc is now past Lewis Hamilton, and Hamilton, who at one stage looked like he was going to get his first win in 2022, is not even going to get on the podium here at Zandvoort this afternoon.
Oh wow! I mean, if he had stayed third, he would have been disappointed. Now this is going to really hurt. So no, definitely feel for Lewis in that decision, and it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, they're all trying to do the best they can in very difficult, tense situation. But tough one.
The race has swung back and forth, and in the hands of Max Verstappen, the lead looks safe at the moment. Sergio Perez, meanwhile, his teammate on the medium tyre behind Carlos Sainz, is rather going to hope that Sainz's pace drops off soon and that he can make amends for losing that fifth place. Behind Perez, Alonso still ahead of Norris, still ahead of Ocon, still ahead of Stroll, and that DRS train might just be forming where they all get the benefit of the extra boost down the straight and nobody makes any real impression.
Norris is very close to Fernando Alonso, though. He's only half a second behind, so he might be able to have a go into turn one if he gets the DRS.
We shall see. We're riding on board at the moment, just a little further ahead with Sergio Perez. There you can see Lando Norris in the background. You can see Sergio Perez with the DRS wide open. Into turn one they go. Perez hasn't got the gap. Norris is going to have to go the long way round into turn one and comes out just a few centimetres behind the rear wing and diffuser of the Alpine of Fernando Alonso.
Fernando knows exactly where Lando is, doesn't he? You can see him looking in the mirrors, placing the